Fly belly up.
This is the game. It's cat and mouse.
Smoked a turkey. Yes. He is down. He is freaking down.
Said he shot an absolute giant.
Fall Obsession, baby.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another Fall Obsession podcast. I will be your host today, Nick Powell with Fall Obsession. And today I have a pretty cool guest, one that I have been kind of keeping my eye on and wanting to get on the podcast here for a while, mainly because we kind of hunt the same area, and it's not very often that happens for a guy like me that hunts in a super populated area. So today I have Chad Jones joining us on the podcast. Chad, what is up, man?
Hey, what's up, brother? Just glad to be on here, man.
Yeah, man, glad to get you on here finally. I know we've been waiting on it for, I don't know, about a month now probably, or I brought it up to you about a month ago, and so glad we were able to get you on here.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you've got a couple of crazy good deer that you've seen around this area, and I know I've got some pictures of some good ones as well, so looking forward to diving in with you.
For sure.
So I guess to start off, let's just kind of get your background, where you're from, where you grew up, how you got into hunting, and just kind of what your story is. So I'll let you have the floor.
Okay. Well, so I grew up in McKinney, born and raised there. For anybody that doesn't know, it's just about 30 miles north of Dallas in Texas, North Texas. So grew up there. Finished high school there, went off to college at Texas Tech, got my degree there, moved back to the McKinney area, and then started looking for a place to call home. And of course, McKinney had changed so much since then. So we just kind of moved to a little bit smaller town just outside of McKinney and built a home on the lake so I can fish and do stuff that we used to do in the small town of McKinney that's, not so small anymore. And so that's where we currently reside, is just east of McKinney a little bit. So, but in terms of what got me into hunting, man, I was you could pretty much just say born into it. My dad, he's hunted his whole life, and he used to do a lot of public land hunting at like Crockett National Forest. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's out in East Texas.
Okay.
We were always going somewhere hunting, but I mean, he was dragging me around when I was 4 years old. So he would take like a camouflage tarp and wrap me and my brother up in it. And, we would sit and play with sticks and bugs and everything while he would hunt. And so just over the years, I mean, that's kind of what developed, is just watching, what he did in terms of, from what he was packing, what he was carrying, how he hunted, you just pick up bits and pieces of it, even though at the time I was so young, not really realizing what it was, but that was kind of what molded, how I approached hunting,
Sure.
Later in life. So, but it started when I was, little. So
Gotcha. Yeah. And it's funny how a lot of us pretty much have the same story. Our dads hunted and our dad's dad hunted. And so it's interesting to hear everybody's background. But then you also have the folks who never grew up hunting and never grew up around it. But now it's interesting them now. And so it's pretty interesting to hear everybody's background, see where they came from, how they got involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Regardless to when people actually start hunting, I guess what it really all boils down to is that they are now, and
Exactly.
You can instantly relate with somebody, that shares, the same passion, regardless whether it's hunting, fishing, camping, whatever, it just kind of gives you that common interest. So yeah, I enjoy talking to people, about, what they do and how they've done it and where it started. It's always fascinating to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know, just checking out your Instagram, you've gotten a couple of pretty big deer to say the least, and right here in Collin County. And I know for our listeners, I hunt in Collin County, and so it definitely piques my ears when I hear, of a big deer coming from Collin County. And so I think everybody around this area heard about your deer in 2018. But there's also some kind of limiting factors to hunting in Collin County, with it being, a high populated area, the certain restrictions that we have to hunt with. What kind of strategies and tactics do you use in an area like this? And honestly, this really isn't for our listeners. This is more for me. Seeing if I could pick up something.
Well, it depends to me on the situation. So like I say, I've got 3 leases in Collin County. 2 of them are extremely high pressured. And when I say that, I mean, like, there's hunters like on the other side of the creeks or on the other side of the fence or the adjoining property. There's hunters all over.
Gotcha.
So my strategies for those areas are completely different than the ones that aren't pressured. Just because a lot of times, what I'll do is, if it's early season before all that pressure comes in, then my main focus is really, I'm only hunting afternoons, and I'm only hunting near food sources. And if I'm not getting tagged out, or the deer are still hot and the deer aren't moving, then I just don't hunt unless it's a cool front. I mean, so a reason for those deer, if they're not patternable, if they're not doing that every day, sometimes I won't go hunt until right before Halloween in October.
Gotcha.
I kind of let the trail cameras tell me when I need to be out there hunting. But if there's deer coming in, every afternoon and feeding in a food plot or on an ag field or something, then you bet, man, if the wind's right, I'm going. But what I have to keep in mind is, I also know that there's other hunters that are also going in opening weekend, or they're going in, as much as they can every weekend in October. And so a lot of times I'm looking at what the wind's doing versus where, poor bedding areas. And if those guys are hunting over there and the wind is a bad wind, or it's blowing into those bedding areas from somebody, a hunter across the creek from me, then a lot of times I won't hunt then either, or I'll hunt on the downwind side, on the complete opposite end. So that way, if anything, it's pushing the deer the opposite direction, because obviously they're not going to go where they smell somebody.
Right.
It's a little bit of cat and mouse, really. But I mean, we've got probably on the largest portion that I lease, we've probably got 16 hunters around us.
Gotcha.
And that's quite a bit.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I said I'm talking just on across the fence or on the other side of the creek.
Gotcha. And these leases that you have, they're not big properties. Is that right?
No, I've got one that's about 20 acres. I have another one that's around 200, and then another one that's about 600.
Gotcha. Okay. Because I only have one piece of ground that I hunt, and it's the area that's huntable is probably 20 to 30 acres
Right.
total, and it's right along a creek, which those deer like to travel along those creeks, and so we definitely try and hit that up a little bit more. But you said you hunt over food sources. What kind of food sources are you hunting over?
Well, I normally don't do, I don't hunt over spin cast feeders. Really I run I'll run spin cast feeders, but it's only for antler growth. Like I'll run, protein, like a protein mix or something whenever,
Gotcha.
Basically from like April to August, whenever the antler growth is coming in, I'll run protein, and then I'll leave the spin cast running just to shoot, pigs and things like that. But I've never shot a mature deer at a spin cast feeder.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense.
Man, I've just watched it for years and years. To mature bucks will avoid those things like the plague unless it's under the cover of darkness. or unless it's in the middle of the rut and they're coming around them, not so much really to eat, but to scent check for does.
Yeah.
And, but they're on high alert. I mean, it's just so I've had much better luck with gravity feeders.
Okay. Gotcha.
Because that way there's no sound, that scares them and and just draws any more negative attention to them. So if anything, I'll use gravity feeders, but for the most part, I just try to sit up on trails, scrapes, things like that. I try to stay really kind of as mobile as I can.
Okay.
To catching them in between, maybe an ag field and bedding area. I kind of let the natural resources do the work for me.
Sure. Yeah.
Food plots. I mean, I've tried putting in food plots, and we've got so many pigs that it's a lost cause, man. They destroy everything.
Yeah, that's what we ran into this year. And it's funny you mentioned the gravity feeders. We actually just put in gravity feeders this year. We've been using spin casts ever since 2012 when they started the deer season in Collin County. And so we just started using gravity feeders, which is nothing more than PVC pipe coming down from where the spin cast was,
Right.
Nothing more than that. So, and you also mentioned pigs. It also, if you keep that high enough, it keeps the pigs out of there, unless the pigs get big enough to where they can break them, which we had happen this year, unfortunately. But
yeah. I've had the pigs get smart enough to realize to push the legs out from underneath. They'll just start pushing on the legs and or wall off and push the legs out. So then I'm having to run T-post. It just got to be a chore. So, so it just kind of depends, what you're dealing with.
Absolutely.
So
I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned earlier. You hunt mainly afternoons.
Early season. That's for early season.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because 9 times out of 10, deer coming out, the bucks while they're still in bastard groups. Most of the time they'll get on their feet, a little bit before dark, and they're coming out, they're feeding at night. But 9 times out of 10, they're back in their bedroom, or at least, back in cover before daylight. And so I normally really won't hunt mornings until about the pre-rut, which for us in our area is about the time of Halloween. And so that's when I'll get in. And plus that's when we start getting some, we'll get some cooler mornings and stuff too. So I'll start transitioning to mornings then. But when the rut starts, for sure, 100%, I'll hunt mornings.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good to know. Are there any other kind of tips and tricks if there's someone that is listening that hunts area similar to Collin County? Are there any tips and tricks that you can offer just in the years of experience that you've had?
Well, like I say, I mean, a lot of it's going to be different for, where you hunt, how big your property is, what type of trees you have on the property. Because I get in some situations where ideally I enjoy, like I like hunting out of lock-on stands, and a lot of times I'll use a lock-on stand with climbing sticks. So that way I can stay mobile and move around to where I need to, instead of just going, well, my permanent stand, the wind's not right all this week, so I can't hunt this week. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely.
So I'll have mobile stands to where, I already have some, areas in mind. The wind is everything for me.
Okay.
With cold fronts coming in, the wind your wind is everything. I mean, and I'm a big advocate of scent crusher, and I agree with scent elimination and all that. Well, you're never going to 100% eliminate it. I don't care what you use.
Right.
I mean, that's how deer live. I mean, that's how they survive, and nothing's going to beat their nose. And so the wind is just so critical, and so if your stand's not set up for the right wind, or if it's kind of cutting across to where they bed or come out of, you just can't even chance it. Because I mean, man, you start getting on a 5+ year old deer. I mean, and he's in that staging area and he smells that, he ain't coming out, and he might not ever come out over there.
Right. Yeah.
In daylight, and so it's walking to and from your stand. I mean, it's critical. Not if you are hunting over bait, say if you're hunting over a feeder, just making sure that you're not walking through the area that those deer are going to come into, because it's no different. I mean, you're wearing rubber boots, scented whatever, deer urine on the bottom. It doesn't really matter. They can smell your human scent, and they can tell fresh, and you just don't want them on high alert, or it may be one of those deals to where they cross over your trail where you walked in, before you see them, you might not ever see them, and
right.
And, so I would say just understanding, wind directions, knowing, where your best stands are and where the best wind direction is. Cause I mean, the biggest issue is people always follow those cameras going, man, I got these deer coming every single day. And you might have the wind just kind of swirling a little bit. Dude, I'm telling you, it's amazing how fast a deer can pick you out with swirling wind like that. Just one little thing that they feels not right or sense that's not right, and it's game over. I mean, little small bucks and does, they might come in there and you kind of look around and then just go back to normal life. But a big mature buck is not going to do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's good stuff. That's one thing I'll be utilizing this next coming up season is I'm going to try out a tree saddle. I don't know if you tried those out or not, or if you looked into them at all.
I haven't. I know what you're talking about. I haven't tried them. Just not knocking that I won't ever try it. I just I don't know, man. About the mobility up there that just kind of freaks me out a little.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that I'm gonna try out. I'm not sold by any means, but I've only gotten up in a tree with it one time, and so we're gonna see how it goes. But that's one thing that, especially on my property, has been a struggle, is that we only have tripods. And so having to hunt with a bow, and I don't hunt with a crossbow, having to hunt with a bow out of a tripod is, it proves its struggles, because you're out there in the open, basically. You're not hidden in a tree. One thing I do have is a ground blind, which kind of helps a little bit, but setting that up in the right spots is difficult as well. So
yeah, that's the biggest thing I would say. I mean, a lot of people love the ground blinds, just in terms of the comforts of it. For one, out of rain, it conceals you. But I would say if there's ever one strategy at all, you have to make sure that it is brushed in to where it doesn't look like a pop-up blind.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you don't, man, there's nothing that makes deer more skittish. I mean, I've watched deer purposely go around areas that we've had pop-up blinds that had been sitting there for a year.
Oh, wow.
So they're used to it. They just associate it with danger. I mean, they just, whether that was them coming by and could smell our scent where we had been, previously, they don't want no part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll walk right up to it, dang near stick their head in it, I mean, but the big bucks, they don't want no part of that.
Yeah, they've seen it all for sure. One thing I didn't add in my notes before we started recording was, and I know everybody wants to get to the stories of the two big deer that you killed these last few years, but one thing I was curious about is I noticed in your Instagram bio that you're ambassador of a couple of things, and you're field staff for a couple of things. I just wanted to kind of get the backstory of how all that got started for you, and, how you got involved with all those different companies.
Okay. So one of them obviously is SCI, um, which they're pretty much the biggest advocate for hunting rights, and so obviously with the Trump election, there was a lot of campaigns from Donald Trump Jr., which is a big hunter.
Yep. Yep.
And so there was a lot of push from them, trying to get that help. And then, of course, the election didn't quite swing the way everybody thought. And so after, Trump had passed one of the bills for a lot of access to public land, we don't know how that's all going to shake out now. But yeah, I'm partnered with SCI. I'm just trying to help push some conservation efforts, and it just kind of spread the word. There's a lot of states that are banning, like we've got California that's trying to ban bear hunting, and you've got states trying to ban mountain lion hunting. You've got it's all over. And the hunting industry and hunters in general are shrinking, and it's a lot of it's our society that just doesn't understand it, or they weren't brought up hunting, and
right.
You're getting more of that. You've got people that didn't grow up hunting, they don't understand it, and all they think is we're out killing innocent animals,
right?
Not realizing that we're eating. I mean, yeah, granted, you get some trophy hunters that maybe donate the meat, but majority of the hunters, I mean, we eat what we hunt.
Absolutely.
But you have a whole lot of people that don't grasp that reality. And
yes.
So anyway, so I'm partnered with them to obviously just try to share the voice of what they're trying to achieve and keep hunting alive, and especially for new generations. And so that's that.
Cool.
And then Numa Outdoors, which is a hunting apparel. I got partnered up with them. A friend of mine, Cody Roberts, he actually owns Numa.
Oh, and, gotcha. Awesome.
Yeah. So it's a funny story because how I ended up meeting him is he also owns Trophy Scan, which they do kind of like volumetrics on antlers. And so he's got a patented software that they can scan in the antlers, and it gives you the total amount of bone that a deer grows on its head, compared to like your Boone and Crockett scores where they take so much for deductions and blah blah blah.
Right. Yep.
This one's saying how much antler did this deer grow without I mean, you're getting a total volume, not saying, okay, well, it's got a drop time, so we're going to deduct this and whatever. So
right.
Anyway, so he had that. He was running that company when I went to the state awards for my 2018 buck.
Gotcha.
And so that was where I met him and the group of his partners. And one thing, we clicked immediately, and kind of one thing went to the other. And at the time I was wearing Kuiu, and he was like, "Hey man, I've got this new company, and wondered if you'd be interested in partnering up with us on it." And I was like, "Yeah, man, absolutely." And so so he shot me over some stuff and wore it, and I fell in love with it. And so I'm full Numa guy now.
That's cool. So yeah. Real quick, this Trophy Scan, is that is that where they you have your buck on a pedestal or whatever, and you can actually physically scan, and it just goes around the buck itself?
Yep. So I
think I've seen this before.
So he can kind of scan really anything. He can scan fish, and they can do 3D modeling of them.
Gotcha.
And like make your replicas of.
Okay. Yeah. When you get a big bass or something, sure.
Yeah. Like paperweights or necklaces or whatever. I mean, it's kind of like limitless on what all you can do with them. But so on mine, yeah, it looks like just a bunch of like super fast flashing lights.
Yeah.
And it comes through an iPad, which has all of their software integrated into it, and they go around, scan the whole thing, all the antlers, and then it spits out what the total volume of antlers of antler growth is on that deer's head. And so they're actually working with SCI right now to become one of their official scorers.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we had
Yeah.
one of our
Software.
staffers, and me and Sam, Sam's the CEO. We work with the fire department, and one of our staffers works with us up there. And so he shot I think it was like 204-inch whitetail or something like that. Well, he entered it. It was like 5 years ago. He entered it in Texas Trophy Hunters, and I think when he took his deer up there, they did the trophy scan.
They've been at the Texas Trophy Hunters Extravaganza.
Yeah, that one. Yep, that's it.
And they have basically like a pull-in trailer that has the TV screens, and you can watch it when they're scanning it, and it basically builds like a 3D model. And yeah, it's pretty
wild.
Yeah, so that was how I kind of fell into that deal.
Well, cool.
And
that's a cool story. Yeah.
Scent Crusher just kind of opened that door a little bit after my biggest deer to date. Just kind of opened that door of teaming up with them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then Wooby Shoes, I know that's kind of a weird dynamic in terms of the hunting world, but got some buddies that former Green Berets, and started the company for the shoe company. They make them in Prosper.
Oh, really? So
Yeah.
I had just discovered them not long ago. I'd say probably 2 months ago, and I just thought they were cool looking shoes. And then it was a veteran started company, or a veteran owned operated company, and so I was like, man, this is neat. And so I had no idea. I didn't do any research in them really. I just followed them on Instagram, and
Yeah.
to find out that they are based out of Prosper, that's crazy.
Yeah. So obviously, made in America shoes, but made in Texas. Right there.
Even better.
In Prosper. And Tim Kennedy is a partial owner. Tim Kennedy's UFC fighter, former Green Beret. You probably looked him up. Pretty familiar face, but
yeah, right,
yeah. So anyway, partnered up with those guys on just kind of helping spread the word where I can. But yeah, love their shoes. They're awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm planning on getting me a pair pretty soon. So,
right on, man.
All right. Well, cool. Appreciate you sharing that stuff with us.
Absolutely.
All right, let's jump into story time. So I have the first on the list is the Big 8 that you shot this past season. It was crazy to me how much mass that dude had. Like, it just seemed, the picture you posted on Instagram, it was just like, he was thick.
Yeah. So funny story is, he was actually on the property that I shot my 2018 buck.
Okay.
He's on the same property. This buck we had last year was a 10-point.
Really?
And
okay.
Yeah, he was pushing. He was probably pretty close to about a 170. He was, I say, between a 165, 170, 10-point last year, and so obviously he survived the season. Nobody got on him because he was very, very reclusive deer, and not a whole lot of daylight pictures of him. And so, fast forward into this coming season, I actually had a buck this summer that I had coming in quite a bit, and I would say he was going to be sitting somewhere between 185 to 190 inch.
Whoa,
deer.
that's wild.
And, I've actually there's a video, if you scroll through there's a video of him walking by, and he's in velvet, just stupid. And so I had him pretty much, every other day he was coming, to one of my gravity feeders. And I was like, okay, if he'll just hold this pattern, for a couple months get into opening weekend, that's going to be game time. And well, sure enough, so he goes through June, July, August, and I'm just watching him blow up. And I was like, oh my gosh, man, this sucker is going to be insane when he sheds his velvet. off. And anyway, so about that time that, the deer started shedding their velvet, which was in September, I didn't get any more pictures of him. I mean, he wasn't coming by regularly, and I'm thinking, man, I'm a month away, dude. Come on, and so, another week goes by. I don't see. Another week goes by, and I'm seeing some new bucks kind of moving around. So I thought, okay, maybe they're kind of transitioning, breaking out of bachelor groups, into their fall ranges and stuff. So, but a lot of the farmers were cutting ag fields, and I had already kind of pinned down, just because of where he came from and where he went. Same way, came in the same way and left the same way every time. And he only came on certain wind directions. And so I kind of pinned down where he was bedding, like the general area. And anyway, they cut those ag fields. And so ever since they had cut those, I never got another picture of them. Never saw him for the rest of the season. And but a buddy of mine had told me that one of his friends got a picture of him, because I had showed him the deer, and he got a picture of him about 3.5 miles from our place. Later in life, it was like October.
Wow.
And so I was like, well, and as far as I know, he didn't get shot this year. So if he's not over 200 inches next year, then something's wrong. But yeah, anyway, so that was kind of my target buck. That was the one I was aiming for. And anyway, he disappeared, so I nicknamed him the Phantom Buck. We kept thinking, man, he'll show back up in November. He'll come back home looking for does. He spent all summer here. Never did. Never came back. So then I kind of transitioned to this point, going, all right, well, I've got my other leases, so I'm kind of just monitoring cameras, going, all right, so now I don't really particularly have a target buck. I'm just going, I'm going to find the oldest, most mature deer, and that's what what I'm going to focus on. Well, so this 8-point was one of the oldest mature deer, but I didn't have any pictures of them. I have 2 other guys on that lease, and both of them had him, quite a bit.
Okay.
Primarily at night, but they had, some daytime pictures. I never had any pictures of them. Never came to my stand once. And so he didn't really initially start out as my target buck, because I thought, okay, I'm not even in the game with this guy, because I'm not seeing him. He's bedding over there close to them. So so I had another property that I was focusing on. I was hunting, had a really good buck showing up there. And so he was kind of my strategy. Well, so then November rolls around, and it was on November 16th. I've got a stand kind of on the north end that I hardly hunted at all throughout the season, and I've got cell cameras. Well, my cell cam goes off, and it's the big 8-point, and he's right behind a group of does. And so I was like, okay, well, so I saw that there was kind of a big winter wheat field that we had out there, and he was in that open field. And I was like, well, he's got to be tending this doe for him to be out in open field like this, because he's never even been over there. And anyway, and so I had work, had some things going on. So the next day at like 5:15, like right before dark, another picture in the exact same spot. He comes right back out following those does. And I was like, all right, I've got to go make this happen. I was like, if he comes back out a third time, because a lot of times they'll tend does for, 2 to 4 days. And so I thought, well, if he does this third day in a row, we're going to make some magic happen. And so sure enough, that third day I go out there, get in the stand, I don't know, probably 3:15, somewhere around there. And it was pretty windy, but my wind was blowing out across the open field. They had been coming from this, thick area that was upwind from me. So I knew my wind would be right. Everything would be perfect if they kind of did the same sequence.
Right.
Well, sure enough. So right about, I don't know, it's probably 5 o'clock. I see some doe start coming out of the draw. Well, this time, instead of coming down the trail in front of me, they come in behind me. And which wasn't a big deal until they got out to the open field, because that's where my wind was blowing.
Right.
Well, so sure enough, I see them. There's like 5 of them. They kind of come through, and the buck, I didn't see him initially, but I could hear something walking like in the thicker brush, back behind him. Well, anyway, the does get out there and they start walking out onto the winter wheat field, and right at this point, they're about 30 yards behind me, kind of, at an angle. So I wasn't too concerned at that point. Well, then all of a sudden she starts walking down, like towards my downwind side. I was like, oh, great.
Yeah,
well,
here we
and
go.
at the time I hadn't seen the buck, so it was like, but it's still, I was like, she's about to blow the woods out right here at last light.
Right.
And anyway, well, sure enough, so I'm sitting there watching her, and her nose goes up in the air, and I was like, oh, great, here we go. Well, luckily, some pigs walked out onto the field, and it took her attention away, and she starts looking at them. Well, then she starts stomping at them, and so she's looking at them the whole time, and I know she's sitting there thinking, okay, I smell something that's not right, but the pigs were bothering her because they were so close. And so I'm sitting there watching, and I see something out of the corner of my eye, and it's the 8-point. He walks out of the edge of the brush onto the open field, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is really going to happen. So, and then this year on that hunt, I was actually using a Benjamin airbow. It's like a compressed air. It shoots an arrow, but it looks like a little like compact gun.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of those.
Yeah, so they just legalized them like a couple of years ago. And anyway, so I happened to have it with me just because of where I was hunting. I knew it was going to be a little bit further range. And so anyway, so he walks out, get positioned, and, the doe gets scared and she starts trotting off. Well, he starts trotting in behind her. So, of course, I'm just like, and I finally get him stopped. I rushed the shot. I made an actually really crappy shot. And it was kind of high up on the shoulder, like right below the spine. And, it was a full pass through. And anyway, but I see him run off, and he just clears the fence like nothing. And I was like, oh, that's not a good sign.
Right, yeah.
So anyway, I give him, I don't know, probably about an hour, get down, I go follow blood. There was actually really good blood for about 100 yards. And, and at this point it's dark. And so I'm like, all right, man, I'm going to back out, come back tomorrow so I can see. And so long story short, I call into work for the next day, and I was like, hey, I gotta go look for this deer, whatever. And so I go down there, and my arrow was, it was sheared off on the tip, so I knew it had hit some bone, but it was a full pass through. And so I go back down to where I last had, had the last blood. So I'm actually on my hands and knees, like looking for the next spot of blood, because it kind of started, tapering out a little bit.
Right.
And so when I see the deer coming out of the ravine, and I'm like, is this really him? Like, I'm looking for him like dead on the ground, and he's walking out of the ravine, and he's kind of cutting through like some like cattails and like ragweed, and he doesn't see me on the ground, and he just kind of walks through, and I can see the hole up above his shoulder, and still had blood like matted on on his hide.
Wow.
But he's limping, not nothing. And so he walks and then kind of angles away and goes back down the ravine. Never knew I was there. And so I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And so I was like, okay, well, obviously he's going to live. So I'm going to back out of here and come back and hunt him in a day or two, because obviously he's still out, looking for does. And anyway, so I go back out. Well, this 10-point comes walking down the trail, and this is at like 8:00 in the morning. And anyway, this 10-point comes walking down the trail. Well, so my wind direction is blowing this, toward him, and I was like, all right, well, he's about to start blowing at me. And sure enough, he has his head down on the ground, and he gets my wind. He looks up, starts blowing. Well, when he started blowing at me, this other little buck comes blowing and running out of there. Well, they both take off like running back to the creek, just blowing across the countryside. And when we did, the big 8-point comes just barreling back out of this little draw. And he's running over saplings, breaking off branches. His hair was all bristled up. Like, I've never seen anything like it in person. And I would have given anything to have had my GoPro or camera to record it. But, of course, I wasn't expecting the deer to still be alive that day either. But fortunately, I did happen to have my airbow with me. And thank goodness that I did, because anyway, he come just, I'm talking barreling in there, and just, I mean, pissed off. Like, he was wanting to fight somebody, like, where are these bucks that's in my spot, you know? So his head's just like whipping around, like he's just trying to find them. And I'm on the ground behind a tree, and he comes storming in, and he stops 25 yards from me, and he's facing me, but he's looking, you know, like to the side. And anyway, so I pull up, I shoot straight through the chest, like right at the bottom of the neck. And he runs about 50 yards and falls over. He actually fell in one of his scrapes. And I was like, what just happened? I was like, you can't even make this up.
Right. Yeah.
And so I go over there and get him. And of course, you know, once I, you know, finally, I mean, I knew he was, you know, he had good mass, but it was like, man, this is just crazy, you know, because, you know, we put in a lot of hours trying to hunt big mature deer, and it's nuts, because everybody there wanted to shoot this deer, but I was thinking, man, I'd love to shoot him, but he's not showing up in my area. And then all of a sudden the ladies got him in trouble, and that was all she wrote, man.
That is a wild story.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
I would have given anything to have been able to record that, because I mean, it was literally one of the coolest things I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just blowing steam out his nose, and I mean, his hair was all bristled up. And of course, you know, his neck was still swollen from the rut. So I mean, he just looked like a tank running through there, and I mean, it was pretty intense.
That's crazy. That's just, and that'll be one of those things that you never forget either.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it was awesome.
Did you end up getting him scored?
So I had a rough score on it, and they came up with 151.
Dang, that is crazy.
Which you know, for an 8-point is pretty good, because you just don't have many times to you know, make up. So I mean, he ultimately made up that score off of his mass, because it's not like he, you know, was just like 17-inch G2s or anything.
For sure.
So, but yeah, the thing is, I mean, he was about, I would say he was 15 to 20 inches bigger last year. You know, but he just started declining. I mean,
it was time to take him for sure.
Yeah, he was an old deer, and he was on the downhill slide. So I was like, man, if there's ever a deer that I'm going to take, that's the one I'd want it to be. You know, one that's
absolutely
past his prime. But yeah, so it was pretty awesome.
That's cool. Sounds like everything worked out then. Deer on the ground, so
obviously
it worked out.
It worked out, so
cool.
I got lucky.
Well, I don't know if we'll be able to top that story, but that brings us into our next story with that 2018 Giant.
Well, yeah, that story was a little nutty too, and of course I didn't record any of that one. I at least recorded some of the 18 or of the last year's buck, but I didn't even have a camera on me for my 2018 deer, you know, which is pretty unfortunate, you know. But
sure.
So long story short, I ended up getting on the lease on basically on November 1st. Had some friends, hey man, got this lease. I was like, man, I know exactly where that's at, because I actually had a buddy that had been hunting it the years before, and so new ownership came, bought it, and they were like, hey, do you want to get on? I was like, yeah, I'm in. And just because I knew the caliber of deer that, that was in that area. And
Yeah.
so anyway, we get on the lease November 1st. I go down like November 5th and just do some scouting, just kind of looking around because I'd never been on the property before. And I found a tree that it was about a 10-inch diameter tree that was just raked all the way down.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, now we're talking, and so I had a cellular camera, and so I put my 5-point cellular camera on, looking at that rub, and I thought, okay, he may not come back to the rub, but there was some other rubs around it. So I was like, man, and it was under a big oak tree. So I thought, okay, he's coming to this area, so he might not come to this rub, but I'll at least catch him passing through. Well, sure enough, that same night, I got a picture of him, his first picture I had of him. And I was like, oh, dear God. I was like, this ain't real. And I initially, my first guess, because, once I started showing some of the other guys on the lease, and they were like, holy crap, and we all kind of took guesses on it. And I guessed he was 223. And so, a couple other guys guessed he was a little higher, and one of the guys guessed he was a little lower. And, so it's kind of one of those deals. Well, there's only one way to find out.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, so everybody's attention at this point, because I was the only one that had him on camera at first. And so everybody's like, oh, dude, we're in on this thing, and so pretty much everybody was hunting that deer. And so I didn't hunt him at all until it started getting daylight pictures of him. Just because I didn't want to go into that area, because I was like, okay, obviously this is his spot, and I didn't want to go in there, for one, to have to check cameras, which is why I use my cell cameras. But I didn't want to go in there and get sent in the area, just for one, because of not knowing where he was bedding. I just didn't want to screw it up, right from the start. And so basically what I did is I kind of let the cameras, show me what he's doing. He was mainly moving at, well after dark. I wasn't getting any daylight pictures. So I was going down to some different areas, putting some cameras out, and I kind of noticed he was only sticking to this one south end. He really wasn't going any to the north. And so, at this point, I don't even have stands up. I'm just trying to figure out, where this deer is going to be killable in daylight. And at the time, I'm going, I don't know if he's even going to show up in daylight. He may be nocturnal, and maybe how he got that big, and so we kind of go through the motions. I'm taking cameras, kind of moving some around on the outskirts of where I think that he was bedding, just so I'm not going into his, bedding area. And then, but I'm getting a ton of pictures of it at night in this same spot on the south. So I was like, all right, this is his domain. This is his spot, and so then I started seeing, pictures of him coming out a little closer, right after it was getting dark. There for a while it was like 10, 11 at night. Well, then it was, it was he was coming out 10 minutes after dark, 5 minutes after dark. Okay, we're getting a little closer here. And so then the first daylight picture I got of him was on November 13th. And so I was like, all right, it's go time. And so that was when I went and I hung basically a mobile stand. I used climbing sticks and like a muddy lock-on stand. And I took that and put it on a beat down trail, that was leading into his bedding area. On one side, it was on like the north end. So that gave me my basically my south wind. It was on the north, but it was my south wind stand.
Gotcha.
Because he would have been coming from the south in his bedding area. So I hung a stand right there. And then I had another one that was on the south end that I went ahead and placed a lock on over by that rub that he had been, coming to pretty frequent.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, on November 17th, some of the other guys were hunting on the property, and they were down at the south end. Well, we had a south wind, so I was like, well, I'm just going to use kind of common sense here and think, okay, well, if their wind is blowing into his bedding area, well, he's got to get up and eat at some point. So why not hunt the north end, and maybe I get lucky and it pushes him to me. Well, sure enough. So I sit on the north end, and I guess it's about 8:45. I see some legs kind of coming through the woods, down through the brush, and on the trail that I was 20 yards from a scrape on this old oak tree. And I'm like, okay, whatever buck this is about to end up right in my lap. And so I see him coming down. Well, then I can see the antlers, and I was like, oh my God, this is him. And so then it set in of going, he's about to come to the scrape, and this is about to go down, and so, so I'm at this point, I'm trying to just hold it together. I'm like,
I think anybody be struggling to hold it together.
Oh yeah. I mean, the perfect wind. I mean, the wind was to my face. I mean, I was like, couldn't have been in a better position. So I was like, okay, well, there's a tree here. If he comes down, that's when I'm going to draw back. So I don't have to worry about getting busted with movement. I mean, I was ready to go. Well, for whatever reason, he turned and changed. He went off of that trail and he came out. I had kind of a little shooting lane. Well, he was at 45 yards and he stood right at the edge of that lane, which, I mean, I don't know. I say I wouldn't have shot him over that 40-yard mark. But it would have, I don't know. I'm at this point, I'm almost glad that he didn't, test me, because I don't know what happened. And anyway, and so, but he stood right at the edge. He kind of looked around this little ravine, and he was looking around, so I could tell he was scanning for does, because I was at the edge of a doe bedding area. And he turned around, walked back in the way he came, and I was like, okay, so he's 100% bedding between me and where the other guys were on the south end. So I narrowed that down to where he was, and then it was just a matter of going, now I got to be in the right place at the right time. So anyway, so at that point I was basically hunting every day. I mean, like most all day hunts. I mean, I'd put in over 100 hours between then and whenever I ended up shooting him.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to, I don't know, I'm trying to think, whatever day, I guess it was the 22nd, which was not Halloween, Thanksgiving. And
Gotcha.
so I told the wife, we had a bunch of family coming in, and I was like, hey, I just got to go hunt. I was like, he's been showing up in daylight. He's coming to my gravity feeder. He's eating out of the feeder. And I was like, which is unheard of. And so I was like, I just got to go hunt for a little bit. I won't be long, hunt a couple hours. I'll come home, be back before everybody gets here, whatever. She's like, all right, just don't be late. So, get up super early. I get down there, get set up. And of course, the wind, he had been coming into that gravity feeder, but the wind wasn't right for that stand, the permanent stand that I had up. So I was like, well, that's where I need to be, but I don't ever want to hunt a stand that the wind's not right. So what I ended up doing is taking a ghost blind, which are, I don't know if you've seen them. They're like mirrored panels.
Yeah.
They angle,
Okay.
like ground. So I took a ghost blind and I set it up on the opposite side, so the wind was in my favor. So I set up, not seeing anything really the first part of the morning. And another buddy that was on the lease, he was hunting that morning. He texts me and says, hey man, just saw the drop time buck hard on a doe. He was headed south. And so I was like, okay. I mean, he's like 3/4 of a mile from me. I was like, the chances of him ever running over here is like slim to none.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, it's probably not even 10 minutes goes by, and I hear crashing and running like through the woods, like to my right. And anyway, so I'm kind of looking over, and there's like this little, patch of like kind of, just some tall grass. And I see this doe come out of the woods, and she starts running through the grass, like right at me. And I can hear grunting and running back behind her, but I couldn't see what it was because it was still thick. Well, so she runs literally like straight for me, and she stops literally 10 yards in front of me. And And of course, she doesn't see me, because the mirrored panels, they don't, they angle down to the ground. So it's not like she's seeing her own reflection being that. But she stops, and I'm sitting there. I'm like looking through like a little like slot on the panels, like I'm kind of hunkered down behind it. And so I'm looking at her, and she stops, and she's looking back. Her tongue's hanging out. She's panting, and I can hear crashing and grunting still coming through the woods. But she's so close at this point, I can't even turn to my right and look, because she would see me. And and so luckily she turns and kind of starts angling back and going kind of back the way she came, but kind of like looping around. And so as soon as she started trotting off, I look over and I see the drop tine buck coming right at me. And I was like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? He's going to see me if I try to draw back, because the ghost blind, your head and shoulders are still sticking out, so you can shoot like kind of through the slots or over the top. And I was like, holy crap, I don't know how I'm going to pull back without him seeing me. And luckily the doe, she kind of started going away from me. And when she did, he changed his angle. And so he started going to cut her off. So he was kind of quartering away from me. But he was still trotting. He was at kind of a slow trot. And anyway, he gets behind this limb. I pull back, and same old song and dance. It's just meh, meh,
right.
Meh. And I'm like progressively getting louder, and he ain't stopping. And I was like, dude, it's now or never. So he was right at 40 yards. Because I kind of knew right through the opening where he was coming, because it was where my camera was. And so I knew where he, how far the distance was without having to range him, just because of the trees that he was going by. And anyway, and so I just led on his near side shoulder, and just led him just a little bit and shot. And when I did, it ended up going through the back of his rib cage and coming out his far side, through the back of his far side shoulder. And so, I knew it hit the liver and everything. It was a full pass through, and I see him run off, and he kind of turns around the corner, and I didn't see him. And so I'm sitting there at this point going, dude, I just shot a deer of a lifetime, because,
Sure.
you dream of a deer like that coming by, but then to get pictures of him that they're, he's so elusive, and you're kind of going, man, for him to ever come by within bow range is probably never going to happen, even though he's here,
Right.
And so it all just happened so fast. And I was just like, that's when the adrenaline hit, was after I saw the arrow pass through. I was just like, oh my God, and anyway, I give him a little bit. I get up, go check my arrows, coated in blood. I had one of those nocturnal, knocks on it, so I could see the shot placement, so I knew it hit the vitals. And anyway, so I go down,
Awesome.
just pouring blood. I'd look out over the field, and he was laying right there about 70 yards, and I was just like, dude,
That's insane.
Yeah, I got lucky. That's all you can really say, is a lot of luck. 'Cause, that it could have changed angles, or the doe could have ran somewhere different, between me and my buddy where he had originally saw him, and I would have never seen him that day. I was in the right place at the right time.
Yep, that's a lot of it. But then I think, as much as it is being in the right place at the right time, I think a lot of it is also your experience and tactics as well, knowing where to set up and how to set up and what to do and not to do. So kudos to you as well for being able to get that close to him.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. That's one thing about it. I realized real quick why he was nocturnals, because there was a lot of people that was hunting him, and the only reason, I'm confident the only reason that he started showing up in daylight in the middle of November was only because of the rut. But he wasn't coming to food in daylight, nothing, until right in the middle of November.
Right. Yeah. Man, that is a cool story for sure. But two cool stories, really.
Two cool stories that I didn't have on camera. That was,
Next year you'll have to hire you a camera guy.
Man, I know, because I'm trying to do this YouTube deal, and I realize I really suck at that.
And it is a struggle.
Oh God, this editing is like I want to pull my hair out. I don't have a creative mind for that kind of stuff, so I
That's
get
funny.
frustrated with it. I'm like, screw it.
Well, maybe we could help you out with that.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Chad, every new guest that comes on, we have a set of questions. It's 3 questions. We used to call them our rapid fire questions, but we didn't really ask them very fast, so then they weren't really rapid fire. But question number 1, what is your favorite hunting memory? And I don't know if maybe we just hit it or maybe it's something else, but if it is the 2018 buck, then that's perfect.
Well, that was besides my first deer that I ever shot, I would say my best memory was the 2018 buck, because it ended up scoring 233 and 7/8.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask. I forgot to ask you that.
Yeah, and so it ended up being the 3rd largest whitetail ever killed with a bow in Texas.
That's crazy.
And so of course, I'm on an all-time high. Like, dude, I'm never topping that, which I'm cool with, and
For sure.
And so so that was my greatest memory up until the 2019 season, which was the following season. My daughter shot her first buck, and man, I mean, nothing will top that. She was 10 years old, and nothing's gonna top being able to be there and experience her first kill on her first buck, and just to see it in her eyes, to realize that now she's got the same passion that I had when I was her age and killed my first deer. And man, it was a special moment, man. It was definitely cool, because as a dad, you never know how your girls, whether they're going to want to hunt or not, but
sure. Yeah.
Buddy. So that's my best memory.
That's cool, man. That's one thing that I definitely look forward to. I got a little boy. He's about to turn 2 right now, and so he's not quite to that age yet. But I'm thinking about starting him pretty soon, just to make sure. But I can't wait until that day comes. So, and that also speaks to that being your favorite memory. That also speaks to how much it means, because you kill a 233-inch deer and that tops it. And so it's just that's cool. Really cool.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. It was an emotional day for a dad,
Absolutely.
I mean, she was just so proud of the deer, and I can remember how proud of my first buck. And of course, hers was way better than my first buck. My first buck was a little jacked up, little 7-point that maybe scored, I don't know, 10 inches.
Right. That's awesome. Well, all right. Well, we'll move on to question 2. Is there a bucket list hunt that you have not? I know you've gotten to do plenty, but something you haven't gotten to do yet that is on the top of your list?
Well, yeah. So hunting in Africa was actually one of my bucket list hunts, and I was actually supposed to go last June for a couple weeks. I was going to be going with Miss Kendall Jones.
Okay.
Over to Africa to hunt. And of course, I was kind of doing the plains game. And COVID hit. And so that got canceled. And so we were supposed to be going back this summer, but now I'm hearing all kinds of restrictions on COVID shots, vaccinations. And so we're kind of in limbo of what's going on, what's going to happen with that. So not sure if that'll pan out, but
man, I hope it does.
Yeah, I do too, man. Don't ask me why, but like what I want to shoot the most is a warthog. I know that cool. Sounds like, well, I would think like a lion or like a kudu or something.
Sure.
But I've just always wanted to shoot a warthog. I think they're super crazy looking.
That's hilarious. But yeah, especially the crazy big ones. They got tusks that make full curls. It's like insane.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, number 3. What is the biggest piece of advice you could give to some hunters out there who might hunt in a similar area that we do? Or if you don't have one for that, just just a piece of advice for hunting in general?
Well, I mean, I would say probably my biggest piece of advice for hunting in general, which would kind of encompass really all of it, not so much just where we hunt,
Sure.
but is for hunters to just respect each other's perception of what their hunts mean to them. I see the deer shaming all the time of people saying, why did you shoot that? Or, this and that and whatever. The thing is, we're obviously pretty blessed to live, in an area that has the genetics to grow big deer.
Yeah.
Sure. But there's a lot of people that don't. I mean, the biggest deer they've ever seen is a 140-inch deer. And that's like a legend in areas they've hunted, and so,
Absolutely.
And so I see people saying that, and I just, it's discouraging because someone, has a passion to hunt and they want to do that. And someone's putting them down just because of, it didn't meet the standards of someone else. That's the biggest piece of advice I would say is man, to each his own. Now, I get it to a certain degree. For me, like, I know the potential of the caliber of deer in the areas that I hunt. And so I'm always trying to shoot, a big mature deer. But that's not always the case. Sometimes I don't always see, a monster deer. And so then I focus on just a mature deer. I want to shoot one that's, up there in his age class and it's kind of maxed out on his potential.
Yeah.
And, if it's a 110-inch deer, then I'm fine with that. So it's because the year before I ended up shooting one that's basically a coal buck. He had like a 12-inch spike just on one side.
Oh.
And that's what I ended up shooting, but he was really old and it was like, man, we need him out of the herd. And I just didn't get an opportunity at the buck, that I really wanted because of the pressure. So, it's kind of one of those things. So, I hate seeing other people getting discouraged or feel bad about the deer that they're shooting just because someone else doesn't agree with it.
Yeah.
And I like when my daughter, I posted her buck, somebody had made a comment of saying, was the buck even legal? It's like, well, first of all, yes, it's legal. And second of all, I mean, why would you even say that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%.
It's just, I don't know. The negativity sometimes drives me insane, but
Absolutely.
I get it. I mean, it's, for us, it is discouraging because I've seen people shoot some deer that I'm not judging what they're shooting, but they're shooting deer that I would judge and say that they're probably not legal. Now that to me is a little different story. If it's an honest mistake, one thing. It's people just shooting to shoot is another, but it's I would say that's the biggest piece of advice, man. Just, just be happy that you have other hunters.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, like, I think we have enough antis that we don't need to be fighting amongst each other,
Yeah, I'm with you.
Well, cool. That's good stuff there. I appreciate that. And really, I appreciate you giving us the time of day to come on the podcast. I can't thank you enough.
Well, man, I'm glad you reached out, and man, definitely enjoyed it. And I'll be scrolling through y'all's YouTube. I like the episode that I've seen. It's pretty awesome. And yeah, if we ever get some downtime, man, we'll need to go catch up, go get a hunt together somewhere.
Absolutely, man. Let me know because I'm in.
Hey, but you can't be telling my secret spots. So
I won't. I won't for sure. Your secret's safe with me. All right. Well, Chad, let them know where they can find you at.
Okay. Well, so I'm on Instagram, and that is at Chad Allen Jones, and Allen is ALAN. My Facebook page is also Chad Allen Jones, and my YouTube channel, which sucks, by the way. But editing, I need a good media production company to help a brother out. that's also Chad Allen Jones. And so, and then the profile picture is the same for all three of them to make it easy.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate it. Thanks again.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you, brother.
Well, guys, that's all we got for you on this episode. If you haven't yet, go check out all of Fall Obsession's social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, anywhere you can find social media, we're there. Go check out our website. That's the hub. That's where you'll find everything that we offer. We got videos, recipes, articles, all kinds of stuff on there. So if you have any questions or anything like that, you can find an area on that website to reach out to us. Also, if you haven't yet, go check out our podcast. We are anywhere that you can listen to a podcast. There's also a place on our website that you can go and suggest a podcast topic. It's fallobsession.com/podcast. If you have a topic that you want us to talk about or a suggestion, then go there and let us know. But thank you guys for listening to another Fall Obsession podcast. We will catch you later.